So welcome back to Visual Theory. I suspect we're going to have two videos today, but we'll see how we get on with this. Lens design part two. Remember last week, and I'm going to fly through our housekeeping and the objectives and stuff. Last week we looked at what is light. Light is a part of the electromagnetic spectrum. It emits from a single source in straight lines, particle energy, but it has wavelengths within those straight lines, and those different wavelengths we see as different colors. We spoke about lenses. A simple lens is a single lens element. We looked at the six basic lens elements, and you should have drawn those in your notes. What do we have? A plano convex, a double concave, a converging meniscus, and there were six of those elements that you needed to go through. We looked at chromatic aberration and color fringing being the result of chromatic aberration, and should have drawn diagrams of how why chromatic aberration is created in the first place. And then we looked in camera raw at the lens effects. We could make adjustments for color fringing. So this week we're going to move on, and we're going to be thinking about spherical aberration and edge definition. A circular lens is not ideal for creating an image, and the edge of the image is not going to be as pin sharp as the center of an image. And so those are the two things that we're going to think about. And if you're buying a lens and you look at the reviews, edge definition compared to center definition are two things that you're going to be thinking about. Covering power and vignetting. So if you think, when we look through our viewfinder of our camera, we're looking at a rectangular image, but the lens itself is circular, and that circular image creates a circular image. And when we look through the viewfinder, we're seeing a cut off section of that lens. On large format plate cameras, 5x4 cameras, the covering power of a lens needs to be much greater so that you can move the back of the camera up and down. But with our digital SLRs, it's a fixed system, if you will, unless you've got a tilt shift lens, and we'll be coming back and looking at those lenses at another time. So vignetting is another impact of a reduced covering power of a lens. Vignetting, the edge of the image starts to get slightly darker, and we see that more if we're photographing blue skies or large expanse of tonality. You'll see it right at the edge, and again you can make adjustments in camera raw to correct for that. Lens flare, jot this definition down on your notes. Lens flare results from non-image forming rays of light in the optical system. When you're shooting into the sun, light hitting the front of the lens from the sun, as opposed to lens that is bouncing off or reflecting off of the subject that we're photographing. The light bouncing off of the subject that we're photographing, those are the image forming rays of light. The non-image forming rays of light are rays of light that hit the front of the lens direct. We can get this in the studio as well if we're shooting with the light shining almost directly into the lens, and so being able to control that is a very important thing. Coma is lens flare shaped like a comet. We'll look at examples of that. Iris flare, pinpricks of light reflected within the lens. And if you think of a compound lens where multiple simple lens elements are glued together, where they're glued together, it's like a mirror. And so when you're shooting directly into the light, into the sun, you can have the shape of the iris or the aperture opening of your lens reflected back and forth within the lens, and that is seen as iris flare. Lens coatings. If you look at the front of your lens, you can see the great colors. If you're an eyeglass wearer, you can choose whether you're going to pay extra to have lens coatings to reduce glare, and that lens coating is there to help reduce the impact of a variety of lens aberrations. Pin cushion and barrel distortion. Imagine a cushion and it's pinned in the middle or bowed out, and we'll look at examples of that. And the circular confusion, I suspect, is going to be a different video. So let's start looking at a few of these things. It's a familiar face to you. So we did have an assignment for students to shoot images with both flare and to take the flare out. And lens hoods are the kind of go-to tool to put onto the front of your lens that will reduce the impact of flare, non-image forming rays of light hitting the front of the lens. But you need to learn what it is and to recognize it when you see it, and to realize that actually you've got to block those rays of light that are creating that effect if you're going to get rid of them. And a lens hood won't always do that. And so it's not a fail-safe option. It will reduce it, but it won't fix the problem altogether. I'm going to open this image in Camera Raw. Let's see. Okay, you probably won't be able to see everything at the same time. Let's see what we can do. If I go into, actually we'll stay here for the moment. We go right to the bottom. This is on our standard basic lens corrections. You can see the dehaze slider down here. And with this, we can increase or reduce the impact of flare. Let's put that back to 0. And what we can see on this image as well is coma. So this kind of lens flare through here, shaped like a comet, is coma. Trying to dash through this so I can cover as much material as possible. As I say, we had an assignment that had students shoot without and with lens flare. And this image, the flare was blocked. It looks like we have an extra kind of funny line across the top here. And that's probably where the student was blocking out some of the light. But the bottom line, they got it. They were able to control lens flare. And it can look really cool and create a really mysterious, romantic kind of look to an image, which, you know, here it's a little overdone, but you could go into Camera Raw and fix that and improve things all round. Okay, let's move on to our next thing, an image. We've seen this before, I think, but I'm going to use this as an example to think about barrel and pincushion distortion. So I'm back in Camera Raw, and if I go to our lens corrections tab, this is where we were last week, looking at defringing or controlling our chromatic aberration. Right at the top here, we can see distortion. I'm going to move the image across and play with the distortion slider. And if I take it one way, I'm going to create like a pincushion effect. Imagine a cushion with your finger pushed in the middle. Everything is pushed in. And if I take it the other way, a barrel distortion. Obviously, we don't want to do this, but it's an optical aberration that we get in some lenses, especially a wider angle lens. And it becomes an issue if we're photographing flat artwork or doing architectural photography where the edges of a building need to remain exactly straight. And so we can go back and make corrections post-production for those things. But certainly when purchasing a lens, looking and thinking about the distortion on it, pincushion or barrel distortion, is really important. In addition, on this tab, so we're still on our lens corrections, down at the bottom we have an option for vignetting, and we can correct for that optical vignetting that we might see at the edge of an image. I've taken it one way here, it's made it lighter at the edges, and you can see it get darker at the edges here. Vignetting is something that can, you know, it can be pretty cool. An easy fix if you're doing wedding photography. A little bit of vignetting can look pretty cool, but I'd say if you do it too much, you're really, you know, it's overkill. You don't want to do it too much. In a sense, what we'd learned with dodge and burn, that the eye is drawn to the lighter parts of the image, and controlling that in a very specific way is a much better way of than just using a straight vignette, in my opinion. All right, so I'm going to stop there and have another video for the circular confusion, which you also need to learn about and do diagrams for today.